school has always been there for almost 100 years.
Welcome to Springdale, Arkansas, home of the largest public school district in the state. Beginning with log cabin schools established by early settlers, an educational partnership among these schools became the Springdale School District number 50 on January 7th, 1884. Springdale's first graduating class happened in 1902. In the early 20th century, Springdale was enjoying great prosperity as a shipping and processing hub for the northwestern Arkansas fruit and vegetable industry. With the economic great times came population growth and the need for new school buildings. In 1882, David Clark Rigg purchased a lot on what is now 800 East Emma Avenue from Joe Holcomb. Almost 40 years after Rigg's death, his heirs sold the lot to the Springdale School District in 1922, and 1 year later, the Washington building doors were open. The building started as Washington Elementary.
I am Mary Umbaugh. I have lived in Springdale all my life, and the first memory I have of Washington School was my mother walking me over there to get my smallpox vaccination so I could start school. And then one summer, 21 years later, I got to teach 6 weeks of Head Start. The summer of 1970, Head Start was just kind of getting started, and nobody knew really what we were doing. We had a little meeting, and then they said, okay, now go out and find your students. And so we went out into the countryside and knocked on doors and asked them if they had any students that would be starting first grade in the fall, and would they be interested in sending their children to Washington School for 6 weeks to have a Head Start.
In the weekends, when school wasn't in session, we could go back. Sometimes, we would go to the playground then, and we could run around the field and do all kinds of stuff. That it was a big back behind the school. Washington Elementary is a big field back there, basically.
I'm Steve Ushery, and I work for Springdale High School. When I was in the 2nd grade, I was going to Central Elementary, and we bought a house on Will Ellis Street, which is right behind our backyard, touches the backyard of the schoolyard. So I went to Washington School from 2nd grade all the way up through the 6th grade there. Things that stand out to me is the 3rd grade, since it was so small, we had a teacher, we had 2 classes, and so I was in 3rd grade and we had a 4th grade class, and the teacher would start half of us on assignment and then she'd go teach the other half. But then in the 5th grade, they brought in all the schools out in the country. Whenever I got older, since there was only one junior high and high school, and nobody in town could ride the bus, but I could walk over to the school and catch the bus and ride it over to the junior high and high school. And so that was really nice and convenient, because not everybody could do that.
Let's see. Where's the heater up here, right? Yeah, upstairs, all the classrooms were on this level for the most part. I think there's
one class.
Mine was downstairs.
One class downstairs, and the cafeteria was down there.
And the principal's office was right there.
Yes.
Right there was the principal's office.
Not that you ever saw that much, huh?
No.
I saw it a few times.
Yeah. And this was the hallway here. So they've added added petitions and stuff. But this was the hallway.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who's reading that class.
Well, I think that might have been 4th grade.
Right. Yeah, that's what.
I think that there's 4th grade, there's 5th grade on this side, and the other end had the lower grades, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And then we just lived, our backyard is just over there. And so we would just come through the backyard to come over here, and we had about a 2-minute commute walking.
That's right.
And it was, extremely convenient. Obviously, we walked out our back gate and went to the school. We couldn't, if I said I left my homework at home, my teacher would say, go get it.
Sometimes, my brother tells me that he could see sometimes my mom would come out and she would talk to the teachers to kind of check up with us. During recess, we'd be out playing, and she'd talk to the teachers, get all the gossip on whether we'd been good or not. So it was quite fun. It was literally very close, right in our backyard.
We felt part of the community there in a big way. The kids I grew up with were kids that they lived in the neighborhood, and most of the kids I went to school with were there or they were bussed in from the country. And we're lifelong friends. I mean, some of those kids I was in school with, I still see them today, and we still talk occasionally. And it's just a big sense of family, really.
Most of the students that I had that summer came from over around Parson Road, and their families were workers they worked in chicken houses and worked in the agricultural field, and they were considered part of the Head Start crowd.
As the 20th century progresses, the city of Springdale's population increased, creating the need for more public schools. Between the late 1930s and early 1980s, Springdale opened 8 more elementary schools to meet the demand of the thriving population in Springdale. But by 1982, the doors of the Washington Elementary Building were closed. While the school was closed, the Washington Building doors found a new purpose, becoming the home of the English as a Second Language, or ESL program, from 2000 until 2018. The Washington Building also became a home for the Springdale Public Schools Education Foundation.
I started in 1968 as a classroom teacher, and I taught for 13 years at Jones Elementary, Elmdale, Lee, and at Southwest Junior High. And from there, I interviewed for and was selected to be the Federal Programs Director, which a month into that position, I found out I was also the ESL Coordinator, which the first one we hadn't had a program. That was in 1995.
When I first came to the office, to the ESL office, we were 4, right, working there for the ESL program, or 3.5 because Vicky was just part-time. I was a translator. I helped people to fill all the papers that they needed to get enrolled, and I did translations and I filed. I could do everything.
We were a team. It's like no one knew more than anyone else did. So we all worked as a team with our state director then, Dr. Andre Guerrero, and we loved it. I mean, we absolutely loved Washington. We were really sad when they said we had to move out.
This was where the migrant office was. So Linda Carnes and Elizabeth Baez worked out of here. They coordinated all the migrant tutors out of this space. Again, this was new space 11 years ago when I moved in.
I'm Chris Stecklein. I'm the Springdale Public Schools Education Foundation Executive Director. So back in 2010, when I started the foundation, I went to Dr. Rollins and said, "Do you have a spot for me?" And so he handed me off to Dr. Bradshaw, and we looked at a couple of properties and landed in this building. So in 2010, I started the foundation office, opened the office up in the basement here at the Washington Building. My office has always been in the basement of the building over on the east side. So when you come in the doors, you come down the stairs, you're in front of my office.
So it's kind of cool to think about. In 9 years, we took the foundation from 0 to, we'd given away $1 million in our first 9 years. And we did it all out of this space. In that same first 9-year period, we had fundraised about $2.5 million. And you think about that, because I used to tell people, you know, we run a small business out of a room in an old schoolhouse.
Part of the nuance of an education foundation to serve the Springdale district obviously has to play to the history of Springdale schools. And it's been really cool for me to go to some of my older donors to say, hey, you know, if you're coming by, I'm in the Washington Building, you need directions. They're all like, oh, no, I know exactly where that is.
As Springdale Public Schools continue to expand into the 21st century, the Washington Building will always be remembered for being one of the first establishments to open its door for Springdale education, creating a building of community for the Springdale residents to love and memories that will not soon be forgotten.
That was where I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot in the hard way. But again, I mean, the teachers there were very caring, and they really had my best interest at heart. And they helped mold me and shape me for the future. And I'm grateful for that.
You know, 90 years ago, 50 years ago, this was the place to be. And now when you see the district moving on to bigger, newer, better equipped space, better way to serve kids in the district, it just kind of shows that you know, we've never forgotten the legacy, what got us where we are, but we're always looking forward to how we can better serve the kids. And in a 95-year-old building, you know, the technology's not here, the things aren't here that you need to have kids compete, you know, in a new digital world. And at some point, you've got to leave the past behind and you've got to move on. And that's what I'd say the district's, you know, they're doing a fabulous job of taking the old, using it as much as they can, and then moving on to the new space that better equips the kids.
The legacy of the Washington building is the fact that it's one of the schools, the original schools that was here, because there was only 6 schools in the whole Springdale School District when I was growing up. And so that's very, very important, whereas now there's well over 30 schools and they're spread out all over the place. And so I think there's a lot of history there.
I really love that building. It was like my second home, you know, and I think we were well organized over there. We had everything, and I really hate to left all that over there.
School has always been there for almost 100 years, and it's a community building. It's a city building. It's not just anybody's building. And I thought that the taxpayers have been paying for this for 100 years, and it would just be nice to have some documentation of what the building looked like, if nothing else, in its last days as being a public building. And it's important because it's had education for many, many children over there. It was just because it was a school. It educated many, many people.